Alright, what's going on, guys, and welcome back. So I got an article video for you today. Number one, because I'm recording a lot of videos before Christmas, and I want to make sure I have stuff daily for you guys, so I need a couple videos that are a little quicker and easier to make. And number two, because this is going to relate to a video I have planned. I don't know if it's coming out tomorrow or the next day as of this going live, regarding a lot of sentiment I've seen from the first couple of weeks of Dragon Quest Monsters launch that has to do with the comparisons to Pokemon. Now, this isn't the worst article in the world. I've skimmed through it a little bit, but it does still perpetuate some of these misconceptions that Dragon Quest Monsters is essentially, you know, a Pokemon-like, or it has something to do with Pokemon, or it's directly inspired by Pokemon. So we're going to be going through this article, sort of critiquing it and stuff like that, and then, yeah, we'll just call it a day from there. Taking it easy, taking it chill. I got Christmas in a couple of days as of the time I'm recording this, so I need to get some stuff out for you guys so you guys are nice and fed. But anyways, so this is a title. Dragon Quest's best spin-off is basically medieval Pokemon. So right off the bat, you could see they're making it like Pokemon is the origin of monster taming, and Dragon Quest's best spin-off, aka Dragon Quest Monsters, is taking from that. It's like that. It's so much like it. It's just a medieval version of it, right? They go on in the article to state, no, it's not that much like it, but these sort of like sensationalist titles definitely cause issues with that. And look, I'm not against people titling things interestingly, but it should at least have something to do with what you're talking about. And Dragon Quest is not basically medieval Pokemon. That's just a lie. But anyways, let's see. Dragon Quest Monsters might seem like a Pokemon ripoff, but the Square Enix spinoff is the perfect candidate to compete against Game Freak's title. So, number one, I wouldn't put Dragon Quest Monsters up there in terms of the amount of sales it can get to compete with Pokemon. And number two, anybody that thinks that Dragon Quest Monsters is a Pokemon spinoff is stupid. There are so many differences. Dragon Quest Monsters is an expansion of Dragon Quest V's monster taming systems, which came out before Pokemon. Pokemon was inspired by Dragon Quest, and it's just saying that it's just stupid. But anyways, the Dragon Quest franchise is moderately popular in the West, but it's absolutely huge in Japan. A series developed by Square Enix, it's many times been compared to its sibling, Final Fantasy. Dragon Quest is actually quite different, however, and one of its many spin-offs instead emulates another JRPG. Again, they're basically like shaping this like it's emulating a Pokemon experience. It's not. It is its own separate experience. It has nothing to do with Pokemon. Owning monsters was not created by Pokemon. You were able to do this in games before Pokemon, like Dragon Quest V, like Megami Tensei, like Cosmic Soldier, like literally any RPG that had any sort of beast taming mechanics that aren't even necessarily video games. Like, this has been a thing since board games, and acting like Pokemon owns it is definitely it's definitely a stretch. Popularized it, yeah. Owns it, no. Dragon Quest Monsters began in the 90s, and the similarities between it and Nintendo's Pokemon were obvious. Nevertheless, what could have been a mere ripoff is actually a respectable subseries that does many things better than the well-known rival. With the US having gone without the games for years, now's the right time for Square Enix to revive Dragon Quest Monsters. And do keep in mind, this article came out on January 1st of this year. So this was before the announcement of the Dark Prince, which is kind of funny. This person kind of predicted it. Dragon Quest Monsters incorporated mechanics from Pokemon. Again, no, it doesn't. So, okay, so this is the title here. Let's see what mechanics they incorporated. Released in '98, Dragon Quest Monsters, or Dragon Warrior Monsters in the West, was a handheld title for Game Boy, a prequel to Dragon Quest V. It's funny they mentioned Dragon Quest V because Dragon Quest V is where the monster taming comes from. It acts as a prequel to that game, much like how Treasures features younger versions of Eric and Mia from Dragon Quest XI. Utilizing elements from the franchise's fifth game, it got rid of the protagonist taking part in battle, instead leaving the Fist of Cups up to the monsters themselves, which makes sense because the protagonists are little kids, right? This obviously drew comparisons to Pokemon, though there were still differences to keep the two. So the only comparison / similarity that it's quote-unquote incorporating from Pokemon is the monster taming. But again, Pokemon didn't invent monster taming, so saying that it's borrowing it from Pokemon is just blatantly untrue. So obviously this drew comparisons to Pokemon, though there were still differences to keep them somewhat distinct. For one, Dragon Quest monsters had a robust breeding system. Yeah, so did Pokemon rip off Dragon Quest's breeding system? Did they copy it? Is the Pokemon breeding system incorporated an incorporated mechanic from Dragon Quest, even though it's different? Like, do you see where I'm going with this? Which Nintendo's franchise still lacked at the time. It also had far more monsters to catch and breed than Pokemon at this point, with these creatures being familiar foes from the Dragon Quest franchise. While the monsters and the stories themselves were fairly cutesy, they still had a bunch of, more of an edge compared to the kid-oriented Pokemon games. When combined with the popularity of the franchise as a whole, it saw DQM go on to receive several sequels. This has helped make creatures such as the iconic Slime into RPG legends at the same level as Chocobos, Moogles, and even Pokemon's iconic Pikachu. The Dragon Quest anime and new titles such as Dragon Quest XI and Treasures have finally gone on to make the series more mainstream in the West, but many of Dragon Quest Monsters titles still have sadly not been part of this renaissance. I mean, it is now. The 6 Dragon Quest Monsters games in the sub-series. Yeah, by the way, everybody keeps saying that this should be Dragon Quest 4, Monsters 4. It's not even close. Like, this is like the 6th game. The reason they call it Dragon Quest Monsters 3 in Japan is because you had Dragon Quest Monsters 1, Dragon Quest Monsters 2, then you had the 3 Joker games, then I think you had like a remake of the first one, and then there's this one. So it's part of the original Dragon Quest Monsters series. The Joker games are like a subset. The only 4 were released outside of Japan. The last 3 was the last of these 3 was Joker 3, which came out on the 3DS. Nintendo has consolidated its handheld, blah blah blah. The console is already home to several similar games to Pokemon, and those have been able to carve out a successful niche for themselves. Again, Dragon Quest Monsters, not a similar game to Pokemon. If anything, Pokemon is a similar game to Dragon Quest. A Pokemon with the Dragon Quest, a game with the Dragon Quest name would easily be able to do the same thing, especially with the franchise getting a bit more of a spotlight as of late. A brand new Monsters game, namely one that capitalizes on the missteps of the recent Pokemon games, would help put the series on the map, even if it doesn't get made a compilation of the older games. This would be sick. I would love to see a compilation of the older games. Including those were never released in the US would definitely satisfy fans new and old. Adding the option to play remade version of this games would help. Yeah, they should honestly just remake all the Joker's games for Switch. That'd be dope. I'd get a chance to play. I need to find 1 and 2. I need to go hunting. Thankfully for Square Enix, gamers are looking. Oh yeah, blah blah blah. Okay, so they might just do it. Cool. Again, it's not the worst article in the world. They're not like, this person is saying it's not a Pokemon clone, right? They're saying the game is worth existing, and they're kind of praising it, which is fine. But I get tired of the constant misconception that Dragon Quest Monsters is Pokemon-like. It's not. Just because Dragon Quest Monsters came out after Pokemon, Dragon Quest V came out before Pokemon. And Dragon Quest Monsters, and I've said this before, while it might be an attempt to sort of capitalize on the success of Pokemon by having a primarily monster taming focused Dragon Quest game, unlike Dragon Quest V, where I haven't beaten through Dragon Quest V, but I believe the monster taming is like halfway through the game. They made that the main focus. Sure, that might have been sort of like a way for them to capitalize on the success of Pokemon, but they're expanding on their own systems. And again, Pokemon took so many inspirations from Dragon Quest V. Like, Satoshi Tajiri was a Dragon Quest fan. And there are tons of monster comparisons that you can make where I've seen people say, oh, that monster looks like a Pokemon. And it's like, that monster came out before Pokemon. There's lots of stuff like that. But anyways, guys, I will see you in the next one. I think that video I mentioned is coming out tomorrow. It's a more scripted and formally structured video, sort of addressing the Pokemon and Dragon Quest situation, especially with what I've seen with some of the early reviews of the game, where people would just play it for like 2 hours and then make an entire review bashing on it. So I have a video talking about that coming out tomorrow. And yeah, guys, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever, Happy New Year, and we'll see you next time. Peace.